have our schedule for December on the table over there if you're interested in what we do. And there's also, because I try to keep involved in everything, the Vernon County is doing a housing survey, and there are copies of it there on the table for you to take and fill out. There is a bin at the desk in the library for you to deposit those once you've completed them. It's a survey for the county to determine what the future of housing is in this county, which we need a lot of. So please take one of those, and there is also a thing you can scan it and do it online. So our speaker today is Marcy West. And a lot of you may know Marcy. She's was the executive director of the Kickapoo Valley Reserve when they started.
Excuse me, I'd like to listen to her, please.
Till 2021. And she wrote a book now about her experience. So she's here to talk to us about that. And she has a few she could sell you if you're interested in her book. So Marcy.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you for coming out on this blustery day. Got a little wind whipped on the way in, but we should be fine. Everybody can hear me okay? Great. All right. So as Kay said, I was the executive director for the Kickapoo Valley Reserve, even before it was a reserve. I started in 1996. And going 24 years as executive director, I got to see a lot. And one day, Mr. Paul Robbins, the dean of the Institute for Environmental Studies, came out for a tour on the reserve. And he thought that the story should be written down. And I thought, well, we've got this visitor center, we've got exhibits, other people have written about the Lafarge Dam and other things, so I would think that everybody already knows. And he really insisted that it needed to be written down. So, technical difficulties.
Sorry. We gotta make sure all of our viewers on Zoom can see what you're doing. My apologies. So give us 2 seconds. As Kay gives me permission. Alright, here we go.
Do you want to sit down? You okay with it? Okay.
Perfect. There we go.
Awesome. Alright.
All right, let's try this again. So I started in 2018 with his encouragement. I thought this will take a year. So 6 years later, here we are. But the process included big gaps due to the pandemic. I went through a job change after leaving the reserve, and definitely some serious writer's block. Has anybody else written, been published, tried writing? You know what that's like to just hit that block? I hit a couple of those. And then at least 5 restarts, and I had some great editors. If you know David Hoff, if you're familiar with the Driftless Writing Center here in Iroquois, Loma Ha helped a great deal. So those folks and a variety of mentors got me over that hump and encouraged me to keep going, that I could really get done. David was a publisher with Mifflin for many years out in New York, and he said that one of his authors took 45 years to write a book. So I figured I was okay. And then in 2023, I applied for and was awarded a grant through the UW Foundation. They have a specific project for the Newsom Fund, Kickapoo Reforestation Fund, that anybody can apply for with a match grant, and you work with a liaison from UW-Madison, College of Ag and Life Sciences, and then the Friends of the Kickapoo Valley Reserve, and I know we have some Friends members here. Just a wonderful organization at the reserve that helped fund the publishing itself. In early 2024, the Wisconsin Historical Society, many people thought that this was such a significant piece of Wisconsin history in our own backyard that would be the natural publisher, but the Historical Society takes very few books per year, and they're now in fundraising mode. So it wouldn't have been done until 2027, and that probably wouldn't have set well. You know, my husband's been very patient, but at some point you gotta get something done. So they introduced me to Little Creek Press, which is a publishing company out of Mineral Point, Wisconsin, and they're just wonderful to work with. They allowed a great deal of flexibility and making sure that I got to do my own style. And so it was just published in September, and so far so good. I've done a lot of these talks for a variety of groups, and the interest has been good, and I'm happy to say it's over. But yeah, just one of the questions that I automatically get is on the font on the front cover. Yes, those lines are supposed to be there because I thought it was creative to try and match the rock outcroppings of the river. If you've read the book, or if you're going to read the book, you'll know I love the river, so it got special attention. And then other things I got to do, specifically, if you know our long-term chairman, Ron Johnson. Ron Johnson out of, he's right on the edge of the reserve. He's a great silversmith, but he didn't feel comfortable writing the foreword. And so he's an artist, and so I gave him some designs, and Little Creek Press allowed those to be used as the kind of chapter headings. So thank you to Ron Johnson. And then some of you know Ben Johnston, who is a long-term employee at the Kickapoo Reserve, and I think he's now doing some work for Valley Stewardship Network. He worked with me to make sure that we had a map that matches what I reference in the book. So thank you, Ben Johnston, too. But, so has everybody here been to the reserve? Okay. So you probably know most of the story about the dam proposal, finishing, not finishing, I should say. But the timeline, I just wanted to illustrate that this goes back to 1930 when folks really encouraged elected officials to do something about the flooding on the Kickapoo and protect the small communities up and down the river. It went through some starts and stops, obviously. COE is Corps of Engineers. If you think about the Corps of Engineers and how many projects there are nationwide, it was a natural for the Corps of Engineers to be brought in to do studies to propose this dam on the Kickapoo River. But a number of things delayed and then started it up again. I put in there in 1966, Green Bay Packers win the Super Bowl. I keep track of my age by the age of the Super Bowl. Sarah does the same. So, so that's telling to me is that this all, a lot of this happened in my lifetime, even though it seems like a long history. So the proposal was this is an artist's rendition. The proposal was to dam the Kickapoo, have this highway scenic overlook. The proposal expanded from just flood control to recreation and economic development. 149 families were bought out, roughly 8,600 acres of land. And as that was happening, the environmental movement was taking off in the early 70s, and perhaps some of you were at an age where the Environmental Protection Act, the first Earth Day in Wisconsin, those kind of things really brought a better understanding and more attention to environmental protection. And that impacted the Lafarge Dam project significantly because it required one of the first environmental impact statements in the nation. And if any of you have worked in environmental issues, an environmental impact statement is usually a couple of 3-ring binders. And this first environmental impact statement was 10 pages long. And the Corps of Engineers had not done them before, and they came to the conclusion that the benefits of flood protection for the communities outweighed the impacts. So again, with the environmental movement happening, there's a lot going on. And the Corps of Engineers was over budget already by purchasing those properties, by redoing some of the road, and of course, all of the cleanup that had to happen. So this is all brewing. The congressional leaders, and again, bipartisanship is a significant thread through this story. The congressional leaders, Republican and Democrat, started to question the budget, started to question the effectiveness, and eventually it was a UW study. So UW-Madison, I got to interview Dennis Keeney, who was a student at the time. They were contracted by the Corps of Engineers to get a better understanding of what the lake would be like. And they found that given the terrain, the type of soils, the variety of issues that our communities have, that the lake probably would have been very shallow and very stagnant. So that was kind of the final straw for the elected leaders, and they stopped the funding. And so in 1975, the construction stopped. So now if you paddle the river or if you're out at the reserve, you still see the dam tower that was in that picture. You see the berm and some remnants of what happened. So from 1975 to 1992, it pretty much sat idle. It got to be known as the government land, no man's land, and people started using it as such. And county government got involved, a variety of entities, but this proposal for a citizen advisory committee came forward, and its names you would recognize still today. Ron Johnson was on it, George Wilbur, George Nedham. George Nedham's picture is still on that fabulous mural here in Viroqua. So these folks came together with former state senator Brian Rood and Representative Dwayne Johnsrud, and came up with this idea for a reserve. It's not a park, it's not a preserve, it's a reserve specifically so that there was low impact recreation, it was still protected, and it could hopefully help the local communities through ecotourism. So the floods continue, issues continue, but in 1996, the Federal Water Resources Development Act passed, and this is a huge document that takes care of Corps of Engineers programs nationwide, and within there is a paragraph about the Lafarge Dam project, and that was the first time that the project was deauthorized. So all of those lawsuits had to continue, but once the dam was deauthorized, then it brought things to a halt for sure. Like, you can't propose another cost-benefit analysis, you can't propose a smaller dam, it's done. And again, that was bipartisan. Senator Feingold, Representative Herb Cole, Congressman Steve Gunderson from Coon Valley. And so that was really a huge step. And it also brought in the involvement of the Ho-Chunk Indian Nation. And within that document of the Water Resources Development Act, 1,200 of the 8,600 acres was designated as trust land for the Ho-Chunk Nation. And it also required a memorandum of understanding. So I don't want to give too much away, but the memorandum of understanding development was really an exciting first year to be employed. So I started in 1996, and the federal legislation was already passed. We had to have the memorandum of understanding done within a year, and we got it done with 1 day to spare. So, yeah, loads of fun. And then the state portion of the land transferred in December 28th of 2000, but it took longer for the trust lands to transfer. But it was all for one for all at that point. And the celebration, the official dedication, really created the reserve in 2001. And then, of course, the visitor center opened in 2004, and hopefully you've been out there for a variety of activities. But there's a picture of the celebration in 2001. that I write about, and it was just such an interesting mix of former landowners who have been through this tumultuous history, the Ho-Chunk Nation, and the young people in the band and came up from school, and the elected officials. It was really a great day. So now we have this beautiful property. It's very large. This is a view from County Highway F on the north, part of the trust lands. And the trust lands have a concentration of cultural sites, which were recognized early on and continue. And the Ho-Chunk Nation manages 1,200 acres. This is a restored prairie on that end. And then this is a view off of Black Hawk Rock, which is another portion of the 1,200 acres that were significant culturally and selected because of the concentration of archaeological sites in that quadrant. This was when we were having those fires and the smoke impact, and the sunsets were just beautiful that afternoon. So unique to the reserve, and again, that Citizen Advisory Committee just set such a good base for it that the majority of board members reside locally. They're everyday citizens. I'm sure you know some of them. Dick Wallen from Viroqua has been on the board for many years, or was on the board. Paul Hayes, Paul and Bernadette were very instrumental. Ron Johnson's in there, Susan Cushing. So it's really an interesting mix of folks who just love the reserve and wanted to be on the policy-making board from day one. We just had very dedicated board members. This was the board that I was working with when I resigned. 2 representatives of the Ho-Chunk Nation. Again, you have to have that cultural interest and expertise brought in. And then 3 are appointed by the governor that represent environmental, tourism, and education issues. And they have staggered terms, so if anybody's interested in serving on a board, you can get on the Kickapoo Reserve Management Board. There's new opportunities every year or 2. It offers a variety of recreation, cross-country skiing when we have a real winter, horseback riding, biking, hiking, hunting. Again, 8,600 acres, it's pretty big. And then education. The education program was just so fun to watch. It was like you saw these people just take off with an idea. And there's education programs for all ages on the reserve. This is our board member, Bill Quackenbush. Bill still serves on the board. He's a Ho-Chunk Nation member, a group of UW students. And I think that's one of the things that if you don't work there, you don't realize how many people come to visit the reserve from all over the nation, all over the world. We've had visitors from Mexico, Germany, Australia. Australia group was wild. But you know, it just is so incredible that we have this gem here, and it attracts such a unique variety of people. And then just a little bit that I really wanted to get across in the book was why it's worthy of being a reserve. And again, sometimes we don't even know what's in our backyard, but the recognition as a national natural landmark, the Upper Kickapoo Valley Prehistoric Archaeological District through the National Park Service. So there's nearly 300 registered archaeological sites and unique habitats that are only found in this dendritic river system. So dendritic river system where we have all these feeder streams that were also a problem and cause flooding, have such unique habitats and support a variety of bird and plant life. And then of course, important bird area is a global initiative to research and protect bird habitat. The reserve, I met people that would come from Texas to fill out their warblers on their bird list, on their life list. So it really is this unique situation. And then of course the state natural areas within, and over 400 plant species and 12 are considered rare or endangered. So when the dam shut down, a lot of people said, oh, it was that stupid snail that they found in the river, endangered snail, cherry stone drop. But it wasn't just the one thing, and hopefully that message comes through in the book. It was the cost overruns. It was the environmental movement. It was the archaeological sites and the endangered species as well. But it wasn't just that one thing. Still heartbreaking nonetheless, but hopefully it's turned into something everybody can be proud of. Oh, now this is going to be better. But the weeping sandstone is one of those things that allows for those incredible diversity of species. So this is just taken from my kayak on a very nice summer day. Now what do I do to get out of it?
Let's see if just the arrow will work. Hey!
Yay! All right, and again, if you've been out there, you know it's protected, but it's also impacted. If you canoe or kayak on a Saturday, there's thousands of rentals that go out of Ontario on the north part of the river. There's multi-use where horseback riders are on the famous Rockton Bridge, and there's cars coming, and there's bikes, and etc. And then, of course, humans and their garbage. So there had to be rules in place, and that was one of the unique features, is that this locally managed board could create policies unique to this very large but unique property that we have. And of course, the flooding continues. I assure you there was nobody in that van when it went in. But the flood issues and how they continue to impact the community, the difference being that now that it's a reserve and there aren't 149 farms, houses, barns, everything, is an advantage. The water goes up, it comes back down, we scrape it off, or we scraped it off the trails, and we move on. But obviously this is something that we're going to have to continue to deal with, and the discussion is going strong in Vernon County about what to do with the small dams. So this river doesn't have the dam, but it still has the impact from the flooding. And, you know, obviously the 2018 flood was just the most incredible thing I ever saw. 2007 and 2008 were bad, but 2018 just really took me by surprise, that no matter where you moved people or how you did things, the power of that water was pretty incredible. So what we hope to encourage is that we're planning for these impacts, and the reserve has a variety of impacts. Obviously invasives, we were just talking about how much fun it is to try and control multiflora rose on your property, for example, or garlic mustard, or anything that's moving in. And then we have the climate change impacts. You know, study after study is now showing that the storms are more intense and with higher water content, and really need to take some thought into where we put things and how we develop. And then of course recreationists, that we just can't be everything to everyone. Shared use trails out on the reserve were unique at the time, and now it's gotten pretty common for trails to be shared use. But the recreationists definitely have an impact, and there's non-stop requests for more activities, more events. Fortunately, the arguments about the off-road vehicles when I started was pretty much settled in the early years, because it was going to be a low impact recreation, non-motorized except for snowmobiles. But currently the recreationists, especially camping, concentrated camping, really has an impact. So the new executive director and the board will continue to have to address these things. Because that's the question, right? I mean, all of these places that we love so much, what is the future of our pieces of paradise, and how do we protect them? So in my opinion, the model of the reserve really works well for a situation like this. And again, that unique relationship with the Ho-Chunk Nation, jointly managing it. We have not found any place else in the nation or the world where a sovereign nation and a state entity manage together. And for 20 plus years now, it's been going well. And that local board, that local interest and the grassroots and the volunteers that help, the Friends group, all those sorts of things are just such an advantage for a model like this. But, you know, again, hopefully people continue to feel the same about protecting this in their backyard, and the feeling, I guess, from the community of how so many people had been wronged or felt like they had been wronged, or that they wanted something different in the project. Hopefully that's all come full circle, because we've seen grandparents with their grandchildren out on a field trip that, you know, really feel much better about it than where they were before. So I guess if we have any questions or comments, that's the end of the slide. Yep.
I have a question. Could you just kind of review a little bit about how the school started?
The forest school?
Yeah.
Sure. So the Kickapoo Valley Forest School is a charter within Lafarge Public Schools. But the education program at the reserve had been building for many years. We had a lot of homeschool families. We had just a variety of field trips and things like that. And our education coordinator at the time, John L. Keesaw, had experience with other forest schools. And we went to Ozaukee County, River Edge, yep, and Beaver Creek, and a couple of others that we had read about. And then the current administration, the Evers administration, when they came in, they offered grants for forest schools and for charter schools, so that just, you know, that it wasn't just forest schools, but charter schools to help rural communities keep up their enrollment. So it just really kind of morphed into, again, Janelle having the lead, but also the superintendent of Lafarge Schools, Megan Gustafson, and a variety of board members that really felt like this was a good idea. And once they got the grant, they were off and running, and a fundraiser for outdoor classrooms and things like that. And you know, those were the times when I could just sit back and watch, because there were so many good people working on a specific project that it just really took off. And I mean, every year they add to it, and there's more kids out there. And that's another one where I just had a family who had been impacted by the land being bought off, and their grandchild or their niece is attending the school, and how much, you know, how that just fits that kid perfectly. You know, some of us think we would have been much better students had we had outdoor classes when we were growing up, instead of sitting in algebra and geometry and
It's a good way to
forcing
get,
those.
it's a good way to get future generations involved in the environment, because it's really hard to do that as a rule.
It is. And if you ever get the opportunity and you get to go see some of the activities, or if you follow them online, I mean, those kids are getting dirty and having a blast, and the parents love it because they get sent home way tired. Good naps, but yeah, the education program, again, it was that idea from that grassroots community entity that built that into the narrative, that we were going to have some sort of an education program, whether it be formal or informal, and having those kind of basics already outlined really let it take off. And then, of course, the support along the way. Any other questions or comments? Anybody else have experience out there you want to share? Catch any fish?
Well, thank you very much, Marcy. It's really good.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.